All right, Algebra 2, Chapter 5, Section 4, Factoring Quadratic Expressions. In this lesson, we're going to look at finding common binomial factors of quadratic expressions. And we're also going to learn how to factor special quadratics. Okay? So let's get on to the lesson. Factoring is rewriting an expression of the product of its factors. The GCF, or the greatest common factor of an expression, is the common factor with the greatest coefficient and the greatest exponent. You can factor any expression with terms having a GCF greater than 1. So let's look at A. All right, 4x squared plus 20x minus 12. If you look at that, you can notice the greatest common factor amongst each term is 4. So if we factor out a 4, it's going to be 4 times, in parentheses, x squared plus 5x minus 3. We're just using the distributive property. All right. B, 9n squared minus 24n. We can factor out a 3n. When we do, it's going to be 3n times 3n minus 8. And we can just use the distributive property to do that. So let's get on to work. Okay, looking at 1a. What can I factor out of each term? I can factor out a 3. So it's going to leave me 3x squared plus x minus 6. So the answer is D. For B, the greatest common factor is 7. So I can factor out a 7. I'm going to get p squared plus 3. So the answer is C. Easy enough. 4w squared plus 2w. Well, a 2 and a w. So the first term, I'm still going to have a 2 and a w left. And the second term, it's just going to be 1. So it's 2w times 2w plus 1. Okay. Always look to see if we can factor something out of the terms right off the bat. We always look for that. Okay, now, we have a term, x squared plus 8x plus 7. Okay? So all we need to do here is we have x squared plus 8x plus 7. We need to find factors. And we're going to use what we call the x factor. On top, we're going to find all the products of a times c, or a times c, and the bottom is going to be b. So our a times c value here is 1 times 7, so that is 7, and our b value is 8. So we need to find the factors, a factor that has a product of 7. We need a product of 7 and a sum of 8. So if we look at that, we can go 7 times 1 meets that criteria. Okay, so what that does is that gives us two factors we're going to break down the b value with. So we're going to rewrite this like this. X squared, that just drops down, plus 7x plus 1x. And all we did was we divided that 8x amongst our two factors, and I'll show you why in just a second, why we did that. Plus 7. Okay, basic laws of math say I can group any sets of terms I want. So we're going to group the first set of terms, and we're going to group the second set of terms. So looking at the first set of terms, what can I factor out of that? I can factor out an x, and what do I have left? X plus 7. Okay, what can I factor out of the second grouping? Nothing really, but I can always factor out a 1, and that's going to give me x plus 7. What do you notice about my two groupings? They're the same number. So distributive property tells me I can join these two and come up with two new equations that look like this. X plus 1 times x plus 7. So there we go. And now we can use distributive property if we want to and factor this back out to prove it, to make sure it works. Okay? But because our a value is 1, we can shave a really big short step. We could have factored it out, and let's do it again, and I'll just show the shortcut. So we have x squared plus 8x plus 7. All right, and we have our a times c value up top, which is 7. Our b value is 8. So we need to come up with two numbers that have a product of 7 and a sum of 8. We said it is 7 and 1. Since our a value, the coefficient in front of the quadratic term, is 1, we can skip a lot of steps and we can just say this is going to be x plus 7 times x plus 1, just using the two terms we have. Okay? Go on. Let's do this now. So 2a, what is our a times c value? That is going to be 1 times 8, so that's 8. And our b value is 6. So what two numbers have a product of 8 and a sum of 6? Well, the two numbers that come to head for me are 4 and 2. Our a value is 1, so we can do a shortcut and just say x plus 4 times x plus 2. So our answer is C. Now notice their answer, they have x plus 2 times x plus 4, and I have x plus 4 times x plus 2. Well, remember, a commutative property of multiplication says it does not matter the order. Remember, a times b is the same thing as b times a. Moving on, next example. Let's do an x factor. We know product of our a times c, so that's 1 times 32, and it has a sum of our b value, which is 12. So two numbers that have a product of 32 and a sum of 12. Well, if you don't see it, you can list over here the products of 32. You got 1 and 32. That's going to have a sum of 33, so that's no good. 2 and 16. That's going to have a sum of 18. That's no good. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 and 8. There you go. 4 and 8 is a product of 32 and a sum of 12. So we're going to go 4 and 8. Since our a value is 1, we can just rewrite this as x plus 4 times x plus 8. So we're done. The answer is B. Next one. X squared plus 14x plus 40. Alright, our a times c value is 40. Our b value is 14. Two numbers that have a product of 40 and a sum of 14. Well, 10 and 4 come to mind. So my answer is x plus 10 times x plus 4. Answer is D. Okay, now we're rolling. Okay, now the book's going to make a big deal about a factor based on if it's negative or positive. We're just going to kind of work through this. I got x squared minus 17x plus 72. So let's write our x factor. Product of a times c is 72, and our b value is negative 17. So now listen. The only way I can get a product of a number to be or positive is both numbers have to be positive or both numbers have to be negative. Well, my b value here is negative, isn't it? So the only way I can get two positive or two negative numbers to be negative is they have to be negative. So when the top number is positive and the bottom number is negative, both factors should be negative. So what two negative factors of 72 have a product of 72 and a sum of negative 17? Well, what comes to mind for me is negative 8 times negative 9. Our a value is still 1, so I can just do the shortcut, x minus 8 times x minus 9. So always be leery of what's positive and what's negative in your quadratic and when you x factor. So let's knock out a few of these. All right, 3a. X squared minus 6x plus 8. So I need to find a product of a times c, which is 1 times 8, so 8, and a sum of my b value, negative 6. So the top's positive, the bottom's negative. I need two negative numbers. Well, negative 4 times negative 2 equals 8. Our a value is 1, so we can skip a step and just write x minus 4 times x minus 2. Answer is A. Okay, let's skip down to 3c. So I need a product of 24 times 1, so 24, and a sum of negative 11. Well, negative 8 times negative 3 is 24. Negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. So x minus 8 times x minus 3. Again, the order doesn't matter. The answer is B. Okay, moving on. Next example is when both numbers are negative. So I have x squared minus x minus 12. So let's look at this. So I have a product. A times C is negative 12, and my B value is negative 1. Well, the only way to get a negative number on a product, one number has to be positive, one number has to be negative. Well, and to have a negative number on bottom, the negative factor has to be larger than the positive factor. So let's think of factors of 12. Factors of negative 12 where the bigger factor is negative. So 1 and negative 12. That gives me a sum of negative 11. That doesn't work. I go 2, negative 6. That gives me a product of negative 12. The sum is negative 4. That doesn't work. I go 3 and negative 4. That gives me a product of 12. That gives me a sum of negative 1. So that's it right there. Bingo. So 3 and negative 4. My A value is 1, so we can skip a step and just say it's x plus 3 times x minus 4. Okay? All right, moving on. Now, factoring when the A value is not 1. Okay? So let's look. So we're given 3x squared minus 16x plus 5. Again, I'm not too worried about the positive negatives because we can work that out. What's our A times C value? So first time we've had an A value, so it's 3 times 5 is 15. So we're looking for two numbers that have a product of 15 and our B value is negative 16, have a sum of negative 16. Well, what did we say before? If the top number is positive and the bottom number is negative, both factors have to be negative. So 15 and 16, so negative 15 times negative 1 gives me positive 15, and it gives me a sum of negative 16. Since our A value is not 1, we're going to factor out that negative 16x. So we're going to rewrite this 3x squared. We're going to factor out that negative 16x to negative 15x plus negative 1x. Okay, and then we're just going to drop down the rest of it. By properties of algebra, we can group any terms we want. So we're going to group the two terms, the left side and the right side. What can I factor out on the left side? 3x. What's left? X minus 5. What can I factor out on the right side to make the parentheses be x minus 5? I can factor out a negative 1. That'll give me x minus 5. Okay. By distributive property, since these two groupings are the same, I can add these two terms together. All right, and come up with a new equation or new factor. 3x minus 1, just combining the two coefficients in front of the parentheses, times x minus 5. And again, we could always FOIL or distribute this to prove that it works. Okay? Next one. Let's just buzz through these factors real quick. So, first step, our A times C value. So 2 times 12 is 24. My B value is 11. So I'm looking for two numbers that have a product of 24 and a sum of 11. That would be 8 and 3. Since our A value is not 1, we're going to replace the 11x with the two terms. So it's going to be 2x squared plus 8x plus 3x plus 12. Now I'm going to group the first two and the last two. What can I factor out between the 2x squared and the 8x? Correct. I can factor out a 2x. That's going to leave me x plus 4. So what can I factor out on the right term to make my parentheses look like x plus 4? That's right. I can factor out a 3. So it's going to be x plus 4. Since the groupings are the same, I can add the coefficients and multiply them. So I can get 2x plus 3 times x plus 4. My answer is C. All right, let's do the negative one. Let's go to 5C. So our A times C value is 12. My B value is negative 7. So I need two negative numbers that have a product of 12 and a sum of negative 7. So that'd be negative 4 and negative 3. A is not 1, so we're going to rewrite it. 2x squared minus 4x plus negative 3x plus 6. Group the first set of terms. What can we pull out? 2x. 2x. x minus 2 plus, what can I factor out